just like honey, sweet to taste on burning lips. Wanna lie beneath the water, feeling icy fingertips. Soothing nectar to my body, wash the image from my eyes. Dirty streets of hungry people, drink the water, dry your eyes. First one look at the reflections, listen to the music made. Drinking water's ease the mind, thoughts of you begin to fade.
Get yourself together before it's too late. Oh. Welcome. Good evening, everybody. I'm Brian Weinstein, and it's now 9:04 in Bridgeton, New Jersey. Where are you all from? Today's a big day, you know that, because Dave is 70 years old. It's his happy birthday. Let's go check in on the guy, the birthday boy, the one and the only one. Happy birthday, Dave. From Shaq. And that's our show, folks. Thanks for coming by.
Brian, you said I was having a happy birthday. 2 reasons I can't. Number one, I'm spending my birthday night with you. And number two, your damn system still doesn't work. Now,
oh, it works perfectly.
No, you claim it's me and my mic. So I reached out to a couple of people to do eCam. It works perfectly, except when it's there with you. So I don't really care about you. Yeah, that's it. So I'm not going to pay a bit of attention.
Who's
I'm
that
going to pay
guy?
attention to Anthony, but not you.
Do you remember Snagglepuss on the cartoons?
I do remember Snagglepuss.
He's a little bit crazy, even. He talks too much, even. He doesn't know what he's talking about, even.
No, that would be describing the Republicans on TV this week.
Yeah, they were something, weren't they, Dave?
Well, let's put it like this. If you could watch that and not be disgusted then you are a Republican. But you're a special kind of Republican. I'm sure that Mitt Romney would watch that and was a little disgusted with it. I would hope. Ben Sass, although he's going to vote against the, spoke out about what a well, he didn't call the word shit show, but you could call it that. And but I have a interesting announcement tonight involving the Republicans in the presidential race. So and to put everybody back. It's not as bad as the Ukraine. It's not as bad as COVID's been. It's not as bad as climate change, but it's pretty bad if we somehow beat those three back. So we'll see what happens.
All right, Dave. All right, so we all know that the big story this week really isn't the Supreme Court even. No, but it would have been at any other time. And we're going to dedicate a lot of the show dealing with Ukraine. We're going to have Kevin Wheeler on. He'll be coming on about a half an hour. He's going to check in with us. Of course, he has 3 good friends who are over in Ukraine fighting right now. So we'll check in with him, see if he has any news, and see what's going on north of the border as far as Ukraine. But first, we do want to discuss the Supreme Court nomination. I think it was a fiasco, and you would think that they'd show some decency and some seriousness during, just an awfully difficult week for everybody, having to see what's going on in Ukraine. But no, they just couldn't do it. So, Dave, I do have a few clips that we can look at. I mean, you won't be surprised.
No, I've seen,
and some of you have seen all.
I'm not really at this point. The ringleaders. I suppose if they kidnapped Joe Biden and held him somewhere, that might surprise me. But short of that, I don't think there's much they could do that would surprise me. They're despicable. They're deplorable. They're dastardly. Whatever D words you want. They're damned by God if there were a God.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So yeah, show some.
Yeah, let's look at a few. We'll go to the web.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Dave. Dave, by the way, did you do anything special today or what?
Well.
Or is it something you can't tell us?
But... Oh, no. Saturday, Judy and I usually go up to the sports pub up the street. And we went up there today, and I guess they knew it was my birthday. So I just had a late lunch, and all of a sudden, Brian, they came out with this giant chocolate lava cake and ice cream, and so rich, but it was very good.
But you're not a dessert guy, if I remember.
No, I'm not. But I will say this: if I were, that would be a great dessert. So that's all. And again, I think I mentioned it last week on the show or some point. For some people, birthdays are huge, and that's fine. For me, they're just another day. Last night, we had some friends we hadn't seen for a while from your area, actually Stowe Creek, formerly. They now live in Virginia. They stopped by, and we went out to dinner. And they asked me, they were young, 20, 21 and 23. And they said, wow, like 70, what's that like? And I would answer them the same way I'd ask anybody else. The only age that ever made a difference for me, there was one age, and that was 17. On March the 25th, I guess, of 1969, I did not have a license. And then the next day I turned old enough, and in a few days I had a license, and that was pretty cool. But now, Brian, something else I think is interesting. Here's a doctoral dissertation for somebody who wants it. When you were growing up, remember, 21 was a big age, right? I mean, for most of us, because that's when you could drink, and you were.
Well, it was 18 when I was in high school.
Right.
Short period of time where it was 18.
There was a short, but for most part. But now it's interesting. At least it wasn't. Kids in poverty areas, like where you still teach and I taught, 18 was a big one for them. And I'm going like, okay, Why? It's not your license. And invariably they would say, because now we're old enough to be tried as an adult. And I don't mean that as a joke. That was a big thing because now they no longer, if they were involved in, criminal activity or thought they might be, that was a big thing. But for now, maybe the one that'll hit me in next year when my son is 50, that might, but I don't think so. Nah, hell, it's not just a number, but it is just a number. Okay.
Right. And I think that's what Zelensky said. He said, I'm kind of getting serious now, but Zelensky said that, he was 45, but it didn't matter in this sense anyway, because seeing all the little kids dead, that at some point your age really just doesn't. See, it depends on the psychology of what's happening.
Well, I think he was onto something, obviously. In the modern era, which is where we find ourselves, life has never been easy prior to this. But I would submit to you in 1945, some things started, and that would be the dropping of the atomic bomb.
Right.
All of a sudden, wow. Now, at the same time, we get the burst of industrialism here in America. We build the roads, everything's looking rosy, but then we find out, hell, we're polluting the air.
Right.
Then we find out we're polluting ourselves with cigarettes, and we move on that, but we do nothing about the air and the water. Well, that's not true. We did do a little bit about the water, because remember I forget the year, but when the water around Cleveland actually caught on fire.
The Cuyahoga River.
Yeah, the Cuyahoga River. And that was, and we'd see it all over. So we've done a little bit of that. So now we've got these two things going on. And now the pandemic, which we all, I suppose, or many of us in the back of our mind, but we never thought it was going to hit. And now we have that. And then in America, we have this special time. I've said before, I believe it to be true. America has never been united, with the possible exception of World War II. But even there were dissenters and, whatever. But this is something different. And this week, and I'll talk about it later, but I'll just bring it up here because it's kind of the introduction. The reason it's different.
Dave, you got a happy birthday from Sandy.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate that. The idea of social media makes this one different. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, why it is different. Even though, remember, there's been fist fights and gun fights in Congress and assassination attempts on presidents and da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's there. So let's get to our friends.
Let's get to some of the clips. I think I have 3 clips for us. It's going to go to a little bit of an echo here.
Circus they put on this week.
So let me put it on the loop back. This first one is, of course, our favorite Ted Cruz. Why not put him on first? Because one could only wish something happened to him, and not good. So here we go. I believe in this clip, Dave. I'm going to show just part of it. She's answering one of his questions very politely, and then he's going to come back, and then I think she's going to come back at him. So let's check it out.
Predators is unconstitutional. Do you still agree with the sentiments you expressed in your law school note?
Respectfully, Senator, those are not the sentiments that I expressed in my law school note. My law school note was about sex offender registration laws, which at the time were relatively new. As you know from our time in law school, one of the things that law school students do is they look for new developments in the law and they try to analyze them. That's something that makes for good fodder for a law school note. My note, which came out in 1996, was shortly after there were new Megan's laws. And the point that I was making was not that the laws were bad, that the laws were wrong. I was trying to assess something that is sort of fundamental in terms of the characterization of the laws. I didn't say that they were unconstitutional one way or the other. What I was trying to assess was how they are characterized. Some courts would look at those laws and call them preventative, and that has a certain set of consequences. Some courts would call them punitive, and that has a certain set of consequences. And what I was trying to do is figure out how to make the determination whether they were punitive or preventative.
Well, your note argued that they were punitive. And I would note that view, there have been some on the bench that have advocated that. The Supreme Court in 1997 decided a case called Kansas versus Hendricks, in which it upheld Kansas's civil commitment statute. That was a 5-4 vote. This has been a question that has been close at the Supreme Court. And I would note beyond that, that in terms of the prevalence of these statutes, all 50 states and D.C. have registry requirements. 47 states have community notification requirements. All 50 states have DNA or blood banks for sex offenders requirements. And 20 of the states, the federal government in D.C., have laws that allow for the indefinite detention of sex offenders. I would note in the state of Texas, a state court of appeals, relying on very much the same sort of reasoning you advocated in your note, struck down Texas's sexually violent predator civil commitment law. At the time I was the Solicitor General of Texas, I personally argued that appeal in the Texas Supreme Court. And the Texas Supreme Court unanimously reversed the Court of Appeal.
Okay, now you see where this is going. Dave, I'm going to take off loop back for a second. You see where this is going. And then
where's it going, Brian?
Well,
where's it going? Brian?
They're first of all, they're bringing up the topic of sex offenders, and nobody likes sex offenders, so to speak. But somehow they're bringing this up as if somehow they're painting a picture that somehow she's lenient with sex offenders.
Well, I suppose since one of the judges, who is a Republican appointee on the court, Clarence Thomas, the jury is still out on whether he is a sexual harasser or not. Maybe clean up your own house first.
Right.
Maybe the most recent, Kavanaugh. There's a definite question there. Maybe clean up your own house first. And I don't think Ted Cruz is a sexual offender. And the reason I don't think that is he's offensive even before you begin to have sex with him.
Right.
So he's just a naturally human offender.
Now, let's see where this goes now, Dave. We're going to go back to the web. This time, they're going to up the ante. Okay, again, I'm going to put on loop back here, so be careful. You're going to see Josh Hawley, and then later we'll go back and see Durbin having to deal with Cruz. So, again, she's going to say something, I believe, here for a minute, then he's going to talk about recidivism, and then she'll come back at him. We'll see this.
Provided for me to exercise my judgment, and I treated those cases and every case very seriously and imposed a sentence that was sufficient but not greater than necessary to promote the purposes of punishment.
Would it surprise you to learn that Mr. Stewart's a recidivist? He was warrants issued again for his arrest just 3 years after you sentenced him.
Would it surprise me?
Yeah, would it surprise you?
You know, Senator, there is data in the Sentencing Commission and elsewhere that indicates that there are serious recidivism issues. And so among the various people that I've sentenced, I'm not surprised that there are people who reoffend. And it is a terrible thing that happens in our system.
Yeah, indeed it is. Let me ask you about the Hawkins case. You and I talked about this yesterday.
Okay, so right there, he's throwing that out there saying, look, well, this guy, he did it again, and you basically let them out. See, he's not really talking to her. He's talking to the 30%.
Isn't that the guy that when the insurrectionists, treasonous traitors were taking over the Capitol, said, yo, go, bro, yo, go, bro. At that moment, he lost any moral ground to comment on anything that happens in the United States of America. And it is ridiculous today that He is still a senator. Ted Cruz would probably just escape to Mexico and then come back. So maybe, but this is what now. Are you going to bring up? Let's see. Are you going to bring up I know you have
one more
kind of a man crush on Lindsey Graham.
I don't have him.
Okay, he was another one that was fairly interesting this week. But go ahead.
Okay, I just want to. This is the one, and I'm going to be quite frank with everybody on this one. I was actually angrier at Dick Durbin because he was pounding the gavel and kept saying, "Please, please, please, Mr. Cruz, would you please? Your 2 minutes are over with." At that point, he should have just called the sergeant in arms, just say, "Take this guy away. Take this guy away." And he didn't do it. So anyway, there's a piece of it we're going to look at. I don't know if I have all of it, but I don't know that we need all of it. Again, I'm going to put on loop back for a second here. So let's go to Cruz and Dick Durbin clashing. It's about 2 minutes.
700 images. You come in with 57
Time
months.
has expired.
Why
Senators
did you
use 2
sentence
minutes
him to
over the
just
allotted.
57 months in the Stewart case? Do you want to address that? Because you're claiming it's cherry picking. In fact, you're welcome to explain any of these cases, but let's take the Stewart case. Why
Senator Coons,
did you sentence him for half the amount?
you're not recognized, Senator. Senator Coons,
You don't want her to answer that question?
you wouldn't allow her any.
Mr. Chairman, she may answer the question. I've asked her why she sentenced Stewart.
You've
an
gone over the
egregious-
time, Senator, by 2 minutes.
Why she?
and a half.
Because you've interrupted me for 2 minutes, Mr. Chairman. Will you allow her to answer the question, or do you not want the American people to hear why, with someone she described as an
There
egregious
comes a point, Senator, where you get a little bit.
Chairman Durbin, will you allow her to answer the question?
You won't allow her to answer.
I will happily allow her to. The question is
Senator,
why
please, you may
you
proceed.
sentenced Stewart, an egregious child pornography possessor, to half of the amount
Please, Senator.
requested by the prosecutor.
Please, Senator.
Will you allow her to answer the question, Chairman Durbin?
Senator Coons,
Why are you not allowing her to answer the question? There's
You're
not
over
another
the time
senator
by
here
2
that
and a
you've
half.
not allowed her to answer the question.
you're finished.
I'm not.
Dave, I'm not going to go any further with that video. Thank you. As school teachers, when you tell a student, don't do that, or next time I'm going to send you to the office, we know what happens. You don't wait as a teacher. You set the example immediately and say, out of here.
We've got a
Durbin
couple
played
of things
around.
that are bad about that. Cruz was playing to an audience of people who were watching it, who somehow think he's decent or good enough to serve in the Senate and run. Since he got down on his knees, if you remember the last time, and God told his wife in a secret meeting that God wanted him to run for president, and he wants to run again. There's no question. So he's playing to that audience of the lowest denominator of America. Now, you said earlier, nobody likes a sex offender, okay? Especially a pedophile. However, because we have a system of laws, they deserve a day in court. Now, I'm going to take it back to when, they're saying, well, didn't you know? Look, when you give, let's use the teacher thing.
Right.
When you give an A to a student, it doesn't mean that he'll get an A from the next teacher, right?
Correct.
If you give an F to a student, doesn't mean he's going to get an F. But at that point, that is your best judgment of the appropriate evaluation of that student, as nice as an A is, or as tough as an F is. And judges, they rule with parameters, right? And again, use that kind of thing. They don't really have an A and an F, maybe, but they have a B and a D, right? So
Right.
they can't really let him go. If there's residents keeping, they can't dismiss. They can't say you've got death, you have a parking ticket. So there's that. But then what happens is you don't know. Now, it would be interesting to see if you were to ask people on the street how many pedophiles are recidivists. And they would say, oh my God, so many of them. That is not the case. Okay. It's not as high as people imagine. One is too many. I understand that, right? We won't name names, I know of 2 teachers who were accused and are on the sex offender registry in New Jersey, as they should be. They were stripped of their ability to speak, as they should be. But I know that neither has committed that crime again. One. Now, again, the law is the law. 18 in most states is the age of consent. I think in Florida it's 11 or something. I don't know. They have the South has those.
That governor.
No, the South has those weird rules. And these teachers were having sex with students, which is a double bad, right? But the idea of it is, and I'm not putting any onus on the girls, but there is a difference between having sexual relations with a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 17-year-old, right? So what he didn't bring up is, neither brought up, and none of the Republicans is, what was the age of this offender? What was he accused of? And I would have turned it around, and I wouldn't have not. She did brilliant. She was brilliantly. She did a brilliant, and it was wonderful. However, me not being that way, I would have turned around and said, oh, you know what? Yeah, I feel bad about that, but I feel worse about your last presidential candidate being charged with 23 instances of sexual harassment. And I believe 2 of them are classified as rapes. And you want to deal with that now?
Right.
No. What they did this week, they are campaigning for 2 things: to destroy Joe Biden and the Democrats, and to elevate themselves to be the choice, the nominee for president. Now, here's what I was holding back a little bit. Kamala Harris, who ran for president, correct? Cory Booker, who ran for president last time. The Senate confirmation of Supreme Court justices, because of the spotlight that's put on that, is a good place for your jumping off for your candidacy. Now, what I found most moving was, did you see the Cory Booker's
Yes.
talk?
Or at least part of it, yes.
And
Very uplifting.
it was. That's what leadership. Now, does that make Cory Booker, the front runner? Or should we just open the White House to him? No, of course not. But what we do have, there were 2 things being attacked there besides the judge. One, by implication, all Democrats. The message is, if the Democrats aren't child predators, the judges that they appoint let the child predators go.
Right. Letting him get away with it.
So it's Democrats.
And that's, by the way, that has always been a particular aroma that comes out of this propaganda from the right side. I remember my cousin, he's gone now, but I remember my last conversation with him, and he was a conservative, was the liberal judges let people get away with everything. And that's the only thing they want to reinforce is that propaganda.
And that's a belief. It's not true. If you followed judges that Donald Trump appointed also many times gave sentences less than the maximum. Right? So that's right. But so you got the demo. But the other, I said two, I should say three were attacked. The next position was attacked is females everywhere. Now they could hide behind, oh, we're attacking her as a judge candidate. Would they attack a male candidate the same way, under the same charges? I don't think so. There are things that go beyond party, and the wrong second-class citizenship for women is one of them. But the people who vote Republican really want women to be second class. Certainly the evangelicals do, right? Big thing. Certainly KKK, Aryan Nation, Proud Boys. They don't say Proud Boys and Girls, right?
Right.
The Oath Keepers do not allow women in. But even on those things above, so you've got that. So you're doing two things there. You're denigrating women so that you look good. Sorry, that didn't work on the intelligent people. And then secondly, you're playing to the base of your base. And the third thing, and I don't know which one is most heinous, that was definitely an attack on race. We know that. Now, again, if you were to ask people, are more sex offenders black or white? I do not have the statistics in front of me, but I would be willing to risk all the birthday money I got, which wasn't a lot, that there are more white sex offenders than black sex offenders. It has nothing really to do with economic status except for this. Donald Trump is proof that if you have money and power, and I'm just talking about Donald Trump, the president, I'm talking about Donald Trump from the day he was shot out of his mother's vagina. He grew up in a world of white privilege extraordinaire, because it was white privilege extraordinaire with some money, and it was white privilege extraordinaire because it was money with a family. His father, we know, had no use for anyone he classified as the other. The second thing that I find interesting is, it would be interesting to know, and these statistics exist, so if somebody out there wants to go get them, how many sex offenders it involves family, not some stranger.
Right.
I guarantee you that number would be higher. I'll make another guarantee. And this one I'm not as sure of, but I would be willing to risk it and roll the dice. That because of the situation in America today, and indeed the world, where we're looking at all kinds of marriages and divorces and remarriages and family, that I would almost guarantee that the number of sexual predators involved in family are not the one father, one mother, one daughter, or one son. There's a mix. But of course, that isn't what Ted Cruz's fans want. That's not what Josh Hawley's fans want. Worse than that, it's not, the facts are not what those who support the Republicans believe. And it wouldn't matter if you put the facts in front of them. They would go like the number 45, fake news, that fake news, fake news. Okay. And when you hand statistics, and it is true, you can make statistics do whatever kind of you want to do, bending them. But sometimes they are indeed true. We're not talking about the interpretation. And of course, all this can be directly traced back to the founding fathers and slavery, all the way up and through. But I think the modern idea, after the civil rights movement of the 60s, we lay at Ronald Reagan's feet. And he is the one who drove it home, the Harlem Black welfare queen. Do you realize, people out there, number other facts that may surprise you, but it's true? There are more white people on welfare than there are African Americans. The number one state that gets the most government back, federal money, government back for their state, is Mitch McConnell's and Rand Paul's Kentucky. But of course, that's not how people view them. You were right. It's urban crime. Urban means black or Latino or Chicano, or, because they're so far behind, Jewish immigrants. So there was no truth there. What did show, though, is our next Supreme Court judge, and I would be shocked if she does. It'll be close, but she will be nominated. And I mean, she'll be confirmed.
Well, Manchin has given his word that he would vote for her nomination. I'm just wondering about Sinema. I don't, she's just a wackadoo.
Look,
she hasn't said anything yet, has she?
No. Well, but I think, I know there are other things, but sometimes in something like this, Murkowski might say yes.
Collins, maybe.
Collins is up in that area. Romney, maybe. So you might not, because you just need to get enough for Kamala to do the tie-breaking vote. I will say this, and I know I saw it on well, I call it your page, I guess our page, Divided We Stand. I saw it on a number of pages. Did you see that
everybody's
chart?
page.
Did you see that chart of the laying out the qualifications, if you will, of the 9 Supreme Court judges, including Ms. Jackson? Did you see that?
I believe I might have taken a gander at it.
Right.
Yes.
There were 9 categories, and she checks off 7, and the most.
She had more than everybody else
3
combined, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, basically. Now, I also think it was a stupid week for them to attack a judge when Mr. Thomas, who is their poster child for conservatives, is in a world of shit. And it was not like to diffuse that, or to, sometimes you bring something up to change the script, as they say. No, and we'll deal with Mr. Thomas later. But I think through all that people will look back on this period of history and that particular Supreme Court nomination, along with Kavanaugh's and the rush of your favorite Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett, and say, if the United States survives, wow, that's the way it was back then. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the way it is. The Republicans are not anywhere near what an American leader should be.
Right. Well said, Dave. Kevin said that he just got home from work. 15 minutes he'll be on, so we'll...
that's fine.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, enough of the Republicans in that sense. And before we get into Ukraine, which we will with everybody, I do want to connect the Republican Party with Ukraine, or actually Russia. I did read an article, and I don't think I have it up here, but basically it was saying there still is that wing of the Republican Party that still likes Putin, and they like him because he is an autocrat. He doesn't put up with the left. And I'm hoping that part of the wing stays that way. I don't want to see the Republicans just slowly move to the right, and all of a sudden they start dropping off. Because I think there's a problem here, Dave, and that is, and it's a good problem for us as Democrats, that I think Biden has obviously benefited from his actions, though they may have been a little bit weak at first. He's been doing pretty much everything you could expect him to do, aside from getting us into World War III. And he seems to be getting, good reviews. Even the right-wing president of Poland seems to be getting along with him.
Can I
Sure.
interject something for a moment? The problem is the right-wing president of Poland doesn't vote in an American election.
Right.
And somehow, I don't know why, Joe Biden has done many things well. Maybe not the way I would have done them. Maybe not all the things I want done. Certainly not all the things the uber liberal in me wants done. However, he seems to be someone who doesn't get credit for what he's done. Because unfortunately, people are suffering right now and blaming the president. And my theory, and I believe this holds, is the president's power is limited. Think about this, Brian, as a justification for my statement there. If Donald Trump's if Donald Trump's didn't have some limitations on what he could do, can you imagine what America would be like today? Well, it'd be under the direction of Trump. So that is, but if you're a Republican and a conservative, even prior to when they went over to the dark side, you really don't want a liberal there. Just
Right.
like as a liberal, I don't want a conservative.
It's in their best interests that Biden fails, but at the same time, they don't really want to see Russia succeed, or would they willing to
I think that
do
I
Biden
think,
in?
again, depending on how large that base is.
And you would agree there is a portion that would be pro-Putin in the Republican Party, simply because they hate us more.
Huge.
Right.
It's huge. It's not like a little splinter thing.
No, I saw it at work. I was talking
Now,
to
think
somebody.
about this. It's not hard to make this jump. Evangelicals somehow accept Trump, either as divinely ordained to be their savior, or the fact that God don't make no mistakes. So if Trump won, it's part of God's plan. Of course, that plan is they believe in someone who doesn't exist, but we're not even going to go there. Or, and I thought the most interesting theory, and that was advanced at different periods, that there are some evangelicals who say we've got to stop those ungodly, liberal, pervert, child molesting, black gloving, whatever. And we're too holy to do it, but Trump, he'll do it for us. You don't think, even though we know that Putin probably has less of a God feeling than Trump, but somehow they have linked Putin, and I've seen it on the evangelical sites, that he is a Christian. Yeah, right. Okay. So what they want, Brian, as far as I'm concerned, they want an all-white country.
This one, I actually disagree with Dave. Do you want to have added on that? Discuss what Karen says there.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to disagree with you. I think Karen's on to something in this sense. Money in the modern world is power. Right?
We have to be careful because, again, I've stated sometimes that works in the opposite way.
In America?
No, in the other way around. In America, that is turning, again, because the Russian model was power creates money, or just power creates the ability to do what one wants to do. Trump, a person who's in tremendous debt, you couldn't argue with me that he didn't have tremendous debt. But
It
what
doesn't
he
matter,
did
Brian.
gain was tremendous
Here's the
power.
thing, in the modern age, and I don't know, I didn't live in any other time than I was born in 52.
But you know,
Doesn't
we're not
matter.
going to go to this place, this Illuminati of
No.
rich
No,
people
no,
who are. It's not that way.
No, Brian, you're taking it to the extreme. What it is this. On the day I was born, something was already set in place, and that was television. Black and white, though it was, and that. And now here I am 70 years later, and we've refined, defined, and what has happened, two simultaneous things. One is the cult of personality. Always been important, but now it's pretty much all. And it's just like television is illusionary, but it creates a reality. Most people who aren't either liberals or staunch Democrats believe Donald Trump has money. And that's the reality for them. And it's hard to disprove that reality since Donald Trump has committed crimes, I would guess, since he's at least age 8, maybe before
I would
that.
argue here, Trev, I mean, I would actually, he's a tool of the stupid. I'm much more worried about the ignorant. That happened in the Soviet Union where the ignorant took power. We could argue left and right about whether it's the corporate this or corporate that, because I would agree to a certain extent that Big Brother business is a much bigger problem than government. Big Brother.
Well, what it is, Brian?
There's too much nuance to simply say that the corporations are the ones that are controlling politically what's going on everywhere.
Well, they are to a certain
extent.
Some
are having great
elected.
Influence, but some are on the right side of the issues.
I'm not arguing that, but I mean, I just think you do.
But
really
see, that's why I say though, you cannot.
Hollywood,
the way we
Democratic
phrase things, we have to be so careful because we get into it's almost like propaganda because you say all corporations are bad and.
Did anybody say that? Gary?
No, but it's the idea that it's the corporations are ruling the world, and that's it. It's not quite
well. I don't think they get together for that secret Illuminati meeting.
No, because first of all they compete against one another.
Well, to a certain extent, who competes with Amazon?
Well, right now, companies like Walmart. They made a big mistake. They didn't realize, COVID was going to put Amazon right there. So now they're trying to chase.
Trying.
Well, that's the way it goes. And you know what? That's what happens.
No.
They were Johnny on the spot. They went from big to gargantuan. We're talking about Amazon.
I understand that.
But that wasn't because they were purposely gobbling it up. They just happened to be. It's kind of like evolution. They were there in that particular environment.
Oh, no, my friend. Teddy Roosevelt during that time, and however he cobbled together his people, that was the age of anti-monopolies. We don't have those laws. They don't enforce anymore. And
they don't have to because
what?
They don't have to because the poor. First of all, the people for the Trumpers. They've got an army of people. It's not the army of the rich. It's the army of the racist. They associate with people. Like, for example, it's more than likely that they are going to vote for Trump because they more closely, or that candidate more closely represents what they are themselves. See what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. And
not exactly, but if they have to
No.
choose a candidate, they say, this is one who is more like me. So when we paint that picture of, 1,000 corporations that are ruling the world, it isn't, it's from the grassroots up too, because
do you think
it's a
Amazon
result of
creates
what's in the
working
ground.
poverty?
Pardon me?
Do you think Amazon creates working poverty? In other words, there's a big difference with the corporate headquarters is coming here. As I said before, the first Amazon building is 2 from where I live on the East Coast. There's 9 construction projects underway here for them. The lowest salary of anyone who works for Amazon here above phone operator or custodian or cook is going to be $150,000. And they'll be up to $1 million salaries. But a worker in an Amazon warehouse is making minimum wage or a little bit above.
Well, they're making more than minimum. They're making, I think their minimum is 15 at Amazon. That's what they pay.
Fine.
And they get, look, I'm not saying they're great. They're better than the state of Kansas where they're, people here, listen, no, really. It's fine if you want to blame Amazon. Don't forget, they do give them health care and they do pay them $15 an hour, which is not good. But if you go to the state of Kansas, I don't hear anybody bitching about the state of Kansas, where I think the minimum wage is still $7.25 or something, was something like that. And they didn't have the corporations that we had here back east. I don't see people going after the governor of Kansas. He's the real problem.
Well, that's true.
Okay? It's the individual
put the
states
governor of
and the
Kansas
state
in?
leadership that's doing it. You don't need any corporation. They're the ones that are influencing the wages. And it's, they're doing the bargaining for them. And it's different in each state. And some people just believe that they should have slave labor, or wage labor, I should say. Wage labor.
Correct.
Okay?
You
And that's a
believe that?
philosophy of the politician, and it's also the philosophy of the people who are there. They actually believe that.
Doesn't make it right.
They're the ones who don't believe in evolution, but they believe in the idea of evolution. As the guy from Soft White Underbelly said, you look at the lion killing the antelope, it doesn't even think about it, and it just does what it does. And it's whether it's fair or not, it's just what happens. It's cruel. And in a certain sense, as human beings, this happens. Sometimes you can feed people money and they still can't get out of it. And there are people who are going to do well and the people who are going to do poor, and it is unfair. There's no doubt about it. But
isn't part of the role of government to balance that unfairness?
Absolutely. But here's my point is that it's just not the corporation. It is, again, it is the constituency. It is your neighbor down the street. This political power, as they say, all politics are local. It's that power in the end which does it. I mean, again, you can blame the Rothschilds for everything you want, but it's asshole down the street that's causing the problem.
Okay, Okay, you saw the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy.
I didn't take that seriously.
Anyway, that's an extreme of that, but they created and flipped it and all that with money. But the idea is, as Veg points out, it would be hard to say that corporations aren't running the economic arm of the U.S. government.
Right. Again, and I'm not a fan of corporations. I told everybody,
not.
My motto is, I don't trust anybody with a suit. I don't for the most part, like corporations. However, all I am saying is to put the blame and say that these forces of keeping wages low has a lot to do with local government and state government.
It is intertwined.
Yeah, right. Well, that's my point. Nuance.
I know.
There is nuance involved.
I know.
So when we throw out these statements, we're doing no better. And I'm not blaming Karen because I get the statement, but we really should just parse everything because this is what Republicans do. And I do it sometimes. I have to catch myself.
Well,
it's so complicated, but what it is,
correct.
It's unfair. I get that.
Basically, and I'm going to go back to Roosevelt, who was a Republican.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, not FDR, of course. And they had something that we don't have that much right now. Our most known journal, well, that's not true. You got Rachel in them, but she's an actress too. They're not really journalists so much anymore. But you had Upton Sinclair, who was also a novelist. You had a number of people who made it their life's work to look at Standard Oil, to look at prisons, and wrote these stories that convinced people that these were bad things. And so we got laws to prevent them, to keep business from getting too big and too uncaring. Now, through a series of plans and unplans, One of the things that came in at that period and bounced all the way through the first couple decades of my life were unions. Can you imagine, Brian? I'm not telling you, but could you imagine if teachers did not have unions?
Oh, it would be horrific
Right. Hold on a second.
for us.
Is it your podcast?
It's my granddaughter. Hey, granddaughter, you're on international. Oh, she left now. I'll call you back. Okay, I'm going to take a break in a few minutes. I'll call you back, honey. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know you were.
Not sorry. You're on there. I will call you back. I promise. I'll take. All right. So, what happens? Now can you take it back to the one before?
Veg.
I'm Amazon free. Yeah, Veg. I really admire you, and what I mean by that is, I'm not Amazon free. I do attack them, which you could say is hypocritical.
They are on time a lot of times, which is nice. It's just, when you can't get somebody to do something right. But what do you do when you cannot get another company to do something right? That's my only problem.
That's part of the problem. Walmart. I mean, actually, Ben and Jerry's.
You have to have efficiency.
Ben and Jerry's, seem to be an environmentally strong company. Can you eat from Chick-fil-A? They're, I don't know. I mean, so I think it's great. I give kudos to anyone like Veg, and I have a number of friends who do that. But however, the real power, is unless we get millions joining Veg, right?
By the way, I have no problem with increasing the tax rate on corporations. I'm just saying I wouldn't blame them for our problems.
Okay, why aren't they increased?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, again, you have. It's not just the corporations lobbying. Again, it's at the grassroots level. There are people like Trumpers. They worship corporations, and they don't even know anything about it. The minute you raise those taxes, the first thing they're going to say is you're a socialist, or they'll say something to the effect, "Well, you're taxed anyway, your income, so why are you taxed?" I'm not.
This is probably
for them.
Not the greatest argument when we're on the edge of World War III, but I believe we spend an inordinate amount of money. Not spend, but waste on defense, especially in the modern age. One of the reasons we do that is political. We build ships that we don't need with overbilling. I mean, it's hard. And I think if you could really clean up some of the spending.
Well, that did kind of work in World War II. Okay, just so you know. During World War II, it did pay off to have all of those armaments.
Okay, so in World War II, if you had the Monitor and the Merrimack, that would have worked well.
No, I'm only saying that though there are times
They're building
when
ships that are obsolete, right? Build nuclear.
Well, all I'm saying is, look, I'm not for an incredible military budget. I know we spend more than anybody, and I believe that we have inflated wages for top brass.
Everybody says, "Oh, we're going to raise taxes. We're going to raise taxes." Not saying it will happen. Not even saying that the bureaucratic machine would be able to do this. But if you could cut back the waste in government, then reprioritize, you could make a strong argument after this pandemic hit that money spent on health prevention is defense.
Yeah, sure.
So that's
again, I have no problem for that. No,
you could make a strong argument that money spent in education is good for America because people will make better choices if they're better educated. Now that's assume you're offering better education. Then second, so you've got that. You've got the stop the waste and inefficiency. Number two, reprioritize. And number three, and there'll be people out there that disagree with me, make it, the term sin tax. I have no problems with sin taxes. If you want to do something, especially that could be counterproductive to you, your neighbors, or the environment, tax the shit out of gasoline.
Right.
Tax the shit out of it. If it's $1 at the pumps, make it $2.50. I don't care. Now I know you have.
Well, in a certain sense, with the price of gas going up, you're essentially getting that.
But it's not. Where's that money going, Brian? It's going to the board and the corporate executive.
Right, but already demand is falling for fuels in the United States because of the price, and that's a good thing.
At the same time, you can't just do that. So you have to reappropriate and make sure that we are at least on par with Europe in terms of public transportation, and we're not.
I agree, and again, where does that point to? And that usually the Republicans, or you can blame, of course, Manchin, who is essentially a Republican, and
do you really
people.
think now? Don't fall for one thing, Brian. If Bernie Sanders were there as the president, and he had any power, which you might as well say if King Arthur were there, because Bernie can't get elected in America, unfortunately, or AOC or any one of the squad, or there's some others, we might get that reform. But I don't want to hear either, and you're not doing this, but people do. The Democrats are the wonder of the poor, and that. Well, if they were, we've had Democratic control since Reagan. Where are the cuts? Where are the increases in taxation for the rich? I'm not so sure that they'll talk a good game, the Democrats, but I'm not so sure even they'll tackle that. And again, I'm not saying it's isolated. I agree with you, Brian. I think you've got a number of problems. You've got unfettered capitalism in a time when monopolies can be even greater than they were because of technology. If you grab the technology, Facebook, now granted, somebody will come after them and they'll fall, but I mean, for a time being, so you've got a public that doesn't understand the complexity of issues and base it on gut. So if their gas prices are high, they'll throw the president out because it's his fault or her fault, hopefully someday, and we'll bring the next one on, and they don't care. You've got you've got a government who has to be funded by money. Do you realize, Brian, if you had told me this in 1952, even with the adjustment of prices when I went into this one, that it's now in excess of $1 million in just about every congressional district to win a seat? That's a lot of money. And yes, there's some people who can do it with the small contributions.
And Facebook.
Some.
And there have been some that didn't do anything. That one guy, that lunatic, he became a congressman and he didn't spend anything.
But that so you've got this nexus of ignorance, which you talk about.
That's the greater problem.
Well,
when you peel, listen, Dave, I'm going to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
When you start peeling away the layers, like for example, let's say again, I was talking about this show from the Soft White Underbelly. So you see the homeless, you say, okay, well you peel off one layer, say, well this one doesn't have a home, so you give them a place to stay, but that doesn't work out because they end up going on the street later and they're still doing drugs, and you peel that away. Well, they're doing the drugs. Now, why were they doing the drugs? Well, we don't know. Oh, they had parents.
I want to stop there. I want to stop each point. I'm not arguing, but I'm saying there's a solution. First of all, what you said, and you weren't proposing it, you were saying what happens. That is ridiculous. To take a homeless person and give them a home, do nothing else, and think.
Well, they try to get them off the street. They know that person is probably going to go, the recidivism, and they're going to go back out. But they have to try to limit the number of people on the streets because of the way it looks. So at least they get them 40% off the street for a while.
Well, they're towns.
And we know that's a joke. That happens in Sunset Avenue or whatever.
That literally round up their homeless and drive them 20 miles down the road to another city and
Right.
empty the bus.
Right. But again, but the greater point is when you start peeling away the layers, it becomes so big that it's very, very difficult. You see the prostitutes who are beaten by their pimps. They get them straight again, and then all of a sudden, 10 years later, you see they're back with the same person, and there's something psychological going on.
The situation doesn't change, right? And
Well,
you're
that's what
not
I'm
gonna
saying.
get them all.
That's that determinism of things. I don't want to get philosophical.
Man, see how you and I part company on that.
Well, what seems so unreasonable to say when each layer you peel back is determinism? It's this happened and this happened before and this happened before, and it's such a great,
Because you can break
profound.
the chain.
Pardon me. Very few can be changed. I don't.
Education doesn't change people.
Yes, but that has to start in the beginning. The problem is when somebody's already 45 years old and they're on the street and they're living in the tent. You can't just send them back to high school.
Why not? But have a program.
They do have programs for that, and
I'm talking about real ones at work. I've worked for them.
all I'm saying is this: is that most, and I think you'll agree with me, is that most of the programs, when the people are that far gone, generally don't work.
Let's kill them then.
No. You have to attempt.
Well, Brian,
Something has to be done.
Whoa. Why do you have to attempt? If it's determined, why do you have to attempt? Is it
Because
better for them to die
at the bottom line,
and decrease the
you know what the
surplus
number one problem is?
population? Scrooge.
No. Here's the bottom line. When you peel,
Go ahead.
and this was discussed, when you start peeling away all those layers and you get to the root cause, it's usually a lack of love. And there you go. And so when he made this analogy about evolution, it's certainly we're not. His point was we're not outside of that. This is the way it works.
Well, let's look. You brought up love. Would you agree with the Greeks that there's more than one kind of love?
Well, I'll say this: it's hard to define love because you can call love as an attachment.
Well, I'm not even going with that debate. I mean, they came up with what they come up with. Eros, erotic love, Philos, Philadelphia, brotherly love, and agape, universal.
Well, if you want to call love an attachment, there are different types of attachment. Yes,
and I would even throw. I guess it's related to the Philos love, but familial love, and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. I think, again, we do nothing to encourage, we'll stay with the Greek model, we do nothing to encourage Philos and agape. We do everything to encourage Eros. Media. Do they actually sit there in Fox and say, "Oh, we want people to be, erotic and sad"? No, but they know that cute blonde women,
right, showing cleavage.
So I mean, there's all that stuff going on. Now, what I would agree with you on is we shouldn't isolate any one thing, which I think is what you were saying, to blame as this.
Right, that's my biggest problem is that people are so quick to blame like one specific thing.
But if you could study it, you might find that it is one thing. I mean, I don't know what it is. I think.
Well, I mean, there. Like I say this, the determinant of it, there is a root, and everything kind of adds on from there. And it goes, like we were talking 3 weeks ago about Genghis Khan. I mean, he takes over China, he takes over what is now Russia. And that's in the 13th century. And since then, he's been gone. But that effect of his, that system is still there.
So let me ask you something, Brian. A little deeper than we go, but I think it's an interesting place to go. Let's use Mr. Khan. Not the Mr. Khan from Star Trek, but the Mr. Khan, Genghis. Was it predetermined that he would be Genghis Khan?
Yes.
Okay, let me ask you something. Do you believe?
It's just the way the physics of the world work.
Hold on, Brian. You don't need to explain yourself.
You were determined from the minute this universe
Okay,
started.
let me ask. Now I'm coming back to you directly. How does that make any more sense than God has a plan for you, and it's God's plan? What is determinism? You're saying that's a plan that you can't break.
One is a disposition. The other is you're already assuming that this intelligent power in the beginning sets things into motion. I'm saying you're starting
what could
something
determinism be an
stupid,
intelligent power?
something. We're going from something that is, simple structure to complexity, but it's a disposition going from A to B to C to D, and that's the way it works. It's a disposition. It's a movement, and it's like a big basketball.
We haven't
we're
argued
at
this
the
for a
edge
long
of it.
time, so we're having fun tonight.
Right.
So, what? I'm using the word determined, not for determinism.
Not in the sense that people are in their mind determined to do something. It's not determinism.
No, I know that. So, how much freedom did you have to sit where you're sitting tonight? And how much of that was determined? And if it was determined, at what moment was it determined?
The moment it was determined is the beginning of the universe. It was unavoidable. I'm basically saying you're doing the best that you can possibly do, and you don't know it. You are a computer. You're just made of flesh and bone.
All right, let me ask you a question then. If you are a computer, do computers glitch?
Computers operate based on the conditions that they have.
Do computers glitch?
You're trying to imply that
I'm
they
not trying to anything. I'm asking you a question.
No, they don't. They do according
Do
to
human beings glitch?
Human beings simply do according to what they have behind them. No, they don't glitch in the way that you think. Like all of a sudden, you went outside the physics of gravity. Because if you're saying that there's a glitch, then you're saying there's some place in the world that gravity doesn't exist.
Well, it's funny you should bring up gravity. Not gravity. I said gravity.
I know what you meant. I'm not going.
Yeah,
it was
I
a
said
glitch,
gravity.
right?
No, gravity.
But you were going
believe
to do that.
No, listen. You believe that to be true, correct? Gravity is universal.
Yeah. I mean, no. Well, hold on. I'm going to say this. There's no evidence otherwise.
Okay, correct.
Okay.
Can you conceive that gravity is completely a mistaken idea?
It's not an idea. It's a disposition that happened.
Could you have a mistaken disposition?
No.
So in other words, 47,000 billion years, if we're still here, gravity will still be a principle that is a disposition that will never be disproven or never found to be anything else. And if we ever do travel anywhere,
I didn't say that. All I'm saying is that to this point where we have gotten, everything that happened before was already written. The book was already written.
And I can't buy that.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, but I'm saying
I know we're not trying to give it.
Okay, but we're not. But I want to make this clear. I'm not saying we're a computer in the sense that we're just some dry thing, but like a computer, like made out of nuts and bolts and chips. We do feel the difference is, unlike the computer, we feel pain, and that's the problem.
Well, okay.
And the illusion
that doesn't make it
is there.
My question is
the illusion. Do you disagree? Listen.
Go ahead.
Is what you seeing what really is, or is it your brain's interpretation of what's in front of you?
Of course, it's my brain's interpretation.
Okay. So that's a good start. So what you're doing is you're a witness to your own consciousness, aren't you?
Well, see, you and I have discussed that before.
And not only that, everything you say.
No.
Everything that you say, Dave, you could not say unless your subconscious could spit that out. I couldn't put this sentence together that quickly, but I had to think about where the verb is and which one adjective I was going to choose. This is happening at a level that we aren't consciously experiencing. And everybody that's watching this now, the way you understand it, it is being interpreted in your subconscious. It's doing all the heavy work.
So here, let me take
this is the way it works.
And we'll end it here. Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Forget all that. But we're going to use that example.
Okay.
You come to a place where the road kind of stops.
Right.
And you can go right and you can go left. You don't know what's right.
Your subconscious will take you to the place that you will go. It will take you there.
Well, then doesn't it have free will?
No, it operates.
Who operates?
Your brain. Your brain is you, not you. Your brain is you.
So is your
you have the
brain
illusion that David Price exists. It is your brain operating as David Price. You're only witnessing that brain, David Price. Hi, Kev. Let me bring you in.
Doesn't your brain have a chance to make a choice?
Oh, there's the birthday boy.
Hey,
happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you.
You old fart.
We got into a philosophical discussion, Kevin, before you
Thank
came
God
in.
for coming in. Did you realize Brian is as stupid as he really comes across? Did you? And you're still friends with him?
Oh, come on.
We're friends forever.
Look at Brian.
It was determined.
Brian
okay.
Brian and I were determined way back when we were like 15, 16. I'm telling you, we were, but
no,
at least
I agree with you. But that's 15 or 16. Brian was trying to intimate that might have been determined before.
The book, I was telling you, philosophically speaking, everything we do is the book is determined from the beginning of the universe. It was the way things go physically. It was going to happen.
How do you then, if it's determined and it's out of your control, all people's control, why should you punish anyone?
Good point. In the same way that people have that
Hi, Joey.
What you're saying is that is somebody guilty if it really isn't their fault? Well, it's the same thing. The judge has to slap you down because he's determined to slap you down because he doesn't want it to continue by not slapping you down. So yes, in a certain sense, a person who transgresses has learned to do that bad thing, and in that certain sense, they're not guilty in the sense that, for example,
so why impose punishment on them?
Because if the judge who's determined to put him away realizes if you do not do that, or if you hadn't done that, like all the other judges, then society would just cave in because you'd let these people get away with it because you keep saying, well, he couldn't help himself. In a certain sense, they couldn't. But in a certain way, the judge can't help himself or herself to put him away because they had to be put away for being bad.
Kevin, I have to ask a question. You know Brian longer than I have. Did Brian at some point use a lot of mood-altering, mind-changing drugs and never came back? Or what happened?
It's just the puck.
I think he got hit in the head too many times with a puck.
Three things before I turn it over. Brian, I'm going to ditch out tonight because those who were listening to the show heard my granddaughter. And as much as I care about the audience, as much as I care about Kevin, Brian, I don't care shit about you. But the idea is I'm going to take a call from her, and Kevin can more than handle it. I can learn what Kevin has.
Are you going to come back in?
No, I'm done.
He's done.
Call her. If I get
Birthday boy's done.
I'll come back in. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be somewhere where I can't get to a computer.
You're on a cruise to where?
No, it's a music cruise. I'm writing about it. And so got some interviews set up, and that's kind of thing.
Is it a corporate cruise?
Absolutely. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
It's determined.
Hey, why not?
That I get on that
You were determined to get on there. I got it.
You said
Yeah,
and I can't blame you.
So what I'm going to try to do, ladies and gentlemen, if it works, and Brian's capable of doing it, I'm going to try to do a couple, what would I say, short reports, so that unless Kevin.
Yes, I hear you.
Kev?
Yeah.
Could you do the whole show with Brian? Because I don't trust him doing the whole show himself. He might tank us, with ratings lower than Donald Trump's Apprentice.
We did really well last week. I think we took a little heat because people didn't like our backgrounds in certain cases, but other than that, we did really, really well.
No. So Kevin, I know you have things to do, but if you could spend as much time with Brian, I'd rest easier. Thank you, Veg.
No
Thanks
problem,
everybody.
brother. Hey, listen, you have a good birthday,
Really,
Dave.
no,
and I'll,
we don't say that enough.
Yeah.
It'll be Dave's long goodbye.
Dave, long good night. Yeah.
I don't want to go anywhere. See,
He can't help
I don't want
himself.
You to say anything, Brian.
He's on to 11.
No,
Hey,
no.
all
You're
Dave
Kevin
wants to
here.
do is stay to back me against you. You know that, right?
Kevin, I have the utmost confidence in you, and if there's any justice to determinism, you will wipe the floor with Brian.
Well, we're going to talk Ukraine here. We got to talk.
That's
Oh
good.
yeah.
This is going to be the story now.
What else
We have
Sounds good.
held back in
All
the
right,
last
kids.
hour and 40 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever it is.
Bye.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm
Dave,
sorry,
enjoy your birthday.
I
Thank
just want to
you.
say
Take care,
I'm sorry I got on late. I work with some real morons at work, and I had to stay a little bit later because nobody knows their job, and it's like, oh my God, give me a break. I'm 62 years old. These kids are in their 20s, and they just don't know how to work.
Right. Well,
So
hey, it's I guess a generation gap and all that kind of thing too. It's just different philosophy. So Kevin, it's great to see you. And since we last
You too, Brian.
spoke, oh, thank you. A lot of things have gone on with Ukraine. You had mentioned to me privately that you saw Biden's speech. I'm going to put the highlights up from that, and I'm going to show everybody. It's only a minute long.
Yeah,
I didn't
put
see
it
the
up.
whole speech. Ronnie told me it was really, really nice. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to play this so everybody can see the highlights, and then we'll come back to it. Okay? You'll probably
sure.
let me see if let me just go to the next thing here. If I can get you one here, hold on for a second, Kev. In fact, yours might actually work better than
there.
Dave's. Remember, Dave gets this feedback, which you don't have any feedback, do you?
No. Actually, it's
See,
coming through
folks,
clear, Brian.
it's Dave's fault. You know,
Yep.
it's
I
Dave's
have
fault.
no feedback at all. I hear
No
everybody
feedback
clear.
at all. All right. Now, what I am going to put on will make you have a little bit of an echo, but don't worry. I'm not going to say anything. We're going to listen to Biden for a minute and 7 seconds. So we'll see what happens here, and then we'll comment on the way back. All right.
Sure.
Okay. Here we go. Joe Biden today in Poland, folks. Let's listen to him.
Need to be clear-eyed. This battle will not be won in days or months either. We need to steel ourselves for the long fight ahead. The battle for democracy could not conclude and did not conclude with the end of the Cold War. Over the last 30 years, the forces of autocracy have revived all across the globe. Today, Russia has strangled democracy, has sought to do so elsewhere, not only in its homeland. There's simply no justification or provocation for Russia's choice of war. It's an example of one of the oldest human impulses, using brute force and disinformation to satisfy a craving for absolute power and control. We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Okay, I'm going to take that off there for a second. So, Kevin, I'm going to put us back into the other scene here.
Sure.
Let me just get us off of the different audio.
It was a bit. Look, Brian, I watched it this afternoon before I went to work, and I was actually in tears. It was a moving speech. I didn't think that you sure wouldn't get Donald Trump doing a speech like that.
Right.
I mean, to me, when he was talking about seeing the Ukrainian kids in Poland holding their hands and stuff like that, I mean, to me, he was very sincere about what's going on over there. I mean,
he's a man who's lost a wife. He's lost a couple of kids.
Yeah.
So he knows what loss is, and deep loss. So he has an empathy that Trump could never have.
Yeah.
Just, so I know where you're going.
I just found it was heartwarming. It was, I mean, there were a couple times he kind of, if you didn't watch actually the captions at the bottom, there was a few things that he kind of mixed up with his words, but I mean, to me, it was heartfelt. Like he came out and talked about it. And I guarantee that speech right now, and I would not doubt that the Russians weren't watching it either. And, you know, I mean, when he come out and, you know, I mean, he could basically come out and called him a tyrant right off the, like.
And said he's got to go, you know.
Yeah, you got to go.
I think it's almost, I mean, I don't know what your feeling is, Kevin, but it seemed to me it's almost a suggestion that somebody within his circle should make the move. I mean, he didn't come out and say it like that, but it sounds like he'd like somebody there to take the chance, don't you think?
Well, you know, and I was talking to Kenny, a good friend of mine, Kenny Diamond, who I bowl with, and he was here this afternoon. We were sitting having a beer, and I said to him, I said, you know what? I said, either it's going to be somebody from the outside or somebody in his inner circle, because the Russian people, especially when Biden pleaded to the Russian people to say, we have nothing against the Russian people. We have it against Putin himself.
Right.
He's putting the Russian people in danger right now, you know.
Right.
But I thought when he came out and said tyrant and he's got to go, you never know what Putin could do. But I'm not saying nuclear.
Well, Putin, we know that Putin tries to separate himself from his circle. He has, you know, the long desk. He probably is in a bunker, so to speak. And now that the war hasn't gone the way he had planned, I'm sure that he's got one eye open wide at night. You know, I would assume that the type of person. Many strong leaders like that tend to fear assassination. It was once suggested that Stalin had 9 or 10 people who looked just like him that he would put out there, you know, when he went on trips, so that he, you know, could avoid any type of assassination. We know that Hitler was, and for good reason, was always worried about assassination attempts. So
Castro was the same way.
Right.
There was a story about Castro back in the day, I'd say maybe 15 years ago or whatever it was, when he had a double. He had like a clone double, they called him, where he would go, if he was supposed to go to some kind of a convention or something, he would have the clone double go, but he would go a different route and have the clone double do the route they were supposed to, you know. But, you know, everybody each his own, Brian. I mean, if you're that paranoid, Brian, to have clone doubles, there's something wrong with you.
Well, I think that the issue I have with that type of mentality is that, much like Trump, he's going to encircle himself with people who are yes people. So it's less than likely that someone will have the guts to put him out unless they themselves feel threatened, and can they get a coalition of people who'll be willing to take him out. So at this point, we don't see it. And if anything, you start seeing some of his military brass already not showing up. They said Shoigu, who was their defense minister, he had been missing for around 11 days, and then he shows up on a video, but we don't know if it's edited or not. There's going to be a blame game. You've seen just in the last 24 hours, the Russian Defense Ministry said that they've achieved their first phase goals, and that is that they have taken out Ukraine's ability to essentially war across the country, and now they're going to focus on Luhansk and Donbass, which is probably bullshit, because they've, you know, even the low estimates show that they have lost at least 7,000 soldiers. It could be as high as 15,000 as of yesterday, and that's deaths. So, yeah, we don't really know where this thing is going to go right now. I know my opinion about it, but when the defense ministry said that they were going to focus on that one region, I felt it was bullshit. What say you?
Well, you know, propaganda is propaganda, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why not say that these were going to be the two hot spots, to say they're going to be the two hot spots, Brian, but there's actually a third. You know, the Ukraine could think that they were going to hit Donetsk and what was the other place?
Donbass and Luhansk.
Donbass, yeah. Why not get all the Ukrainian full line military there, but they were going to go somewhere else?
Well, that was just thinking that maybe they were trying to entice them to leave Kiev and go down south, and then that's why you just can't trust them at all. So that really kind of worried me. Now, there was something interesting, Kevin, that I saw. It was actually a recording of a Russian soldier who allegedly ran over his commander. He ran over his legs. And in this conversation, which was intercepted, now I'm going to use this, folks, as what he said in Russian. They call him debil, which is kind of like a retard. And I don't like using that expression, but know that it was said. Anybody who's read Catch-22 or seen the movie, there was a suggestion that the person who's most dangerous is the one who can get you killed, whether he is on the other side of the war or he's within your unit and get you killed. And in this case, I guess which is called fragging, the tankist and I guess the two others in the tank decided that their commander was a threat to them, and they allegedly ran his legs over. They were so pissed off at him, saying what a retard. Again, this is him speaking. What a retard the commander was, and they couldn't take it anymore because here these guys had frostbite. They were, getting nailed by the javelins, and at some point they just couldn't take it anymore. Now, we don't know if that's absolutely true, but we did hear the audio. That kind of thing doesn't, of course, jibe what you were talking about, like the propaganda that you see going throughout Russia. And even today, I was speaking with a woman. I didn't get into a political conversation with her. She's all for Putin. So she said, I guess you guys all don't like us. I can remain quiet. But we're okay with that because, we're going to stay within our great Russian culture. And we don't care if the world doesn't like us. And that's the way they think. And that, to me, Kevin, is just sounds a lot like Trumpism.
Yeah. Hey, each his own, right, Brian? Each his own. Look if you want to believe in Putin, Matt, that's great. So when you're totally 100% cut off in the world and you're starving and your kids are starving, who are you going to blame? Who are you going to blame?
Yeah, I'm just wondering too, is when the kids don't come back. Now, Epimew said that Epimew says that I'm assuming you're talking about the commander's now dead. I wouldn't doubt it. But thank you. Frustration. Yeah, soldiers do get frustrated, but they don't always take them out. And it is rare in the Russian army, but I guess it can happen. But sooner or later, as Kevin was saying, no matter what the propaganda, if you've lost 15,000 soldiers, and then you have some that come back half a soldier, if you know what I mean, that hits back home, because then you have a lot of mothers, obviously, that say, where's my son? And they can't even get a burial. Now it starts getting at that inner circle, because that means something to the people. That's saying that, my son's life didn't mean anything to you. You can't explain it out. And this is, of course, what happened in Vietnam. So this, and by the way, this is looking ugly. And Kevin, I am going to get back to you about your friend in a second. So I don't want to. But again, when you have this type of war effort, which is disastrous from all accounts, you see that in 1 month, you've probably lost a minimum 7,000 soldiers, maybe 15,000 soldiers in 1 month. Think about that. You multiply that times 1 year, and you're well over 100,000 soldiers, and those are young people.
And that's not including collateral damage.
Right. And that is another thing too. We'll get to, but
civilians.
I don't think he particularly cares about that, but. You still have to. You have a lot of these injuries, and it makes me think too how the Ukrainian army is operating. You shoot to injure, instead to kill. You take out, for example, what is it? The javelins cost around $60,000 to fire one of those missiles. You take out a tank, they're worth about $2 million, $3 million. So and you get 3 people. I mean, it gets morbid there. 3 people die. In some cases, if they're carrying combat units, up to 10 people, but they have to figure out. A lot of people were wondering, well, why didn't they take out the entire unit? Well, with the javelin, though, if you just get one little Jeep or truck, you're losing money on that 60,000. So you try to take out a few in the front. The tanks were talking, and it gets into that aspect. How do you most hurt the Russians? And it seems they're doing a great job. In fact, they say that Kevin, that the Ukrainians now have more tanks than when they started with in the army, because they've taken some of these Russians.
Some of the Russian tanks, yeah.
Right.
I don't know whether the Russians just gave up and left the tanks lying there or whatever.
Mhm.
But I mean, like, you can't tell me that every Russian soldier that's going into Ukraine wants to be involved in this battle, even though they sign up. I don't even think half the parents want their sons there. But once you sign up with the military, when your government says you're going to fight this country, you're going to fight.
Right. And you're
But I mean,
stuck.
like, yeah, but I mean, like, this is just like, this would be like Ontario in Canada. If we were separated from Quebec or Alberta, it'd be like, okay, well, Ontario wants to take over Alberta. We're killing Canadians and we're Canadians.
Right.
That's, to me, that's what's happening in
Essentially
Ukraine.
is, right. Because you do have some Russians who are married to Ukrainians and vice versa.
Yeah.
Some who have lived in both areas. Children are, same language, basically. So that means... Now, Kevin, if you can just explain, for those who have just joined us or haven't seen you, Kevin, Kevin was going to go to Ukraine, actually. Now, Kevin, I don't want to bring up things, but if you don't mind, Kevin has had a couple of serious heart attacks, and they wouldn't let him go. But he has 3 friends. So if you could explain what your friends decided to do and what happened, I'd really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was three buddies of mine in the Crazy Eights, our unit in the Canadian Forces, that ended up signing up. 2 of the guys are 59. One guy's 60. Tommy, it's not his real name, guys. I can't give you his real name, but his name, I go by Tommy. He actually sent me an email this afternoon. I got it when I got home from work, and he said he's safe. He is in Kiev. He's been working to get a lot of the Ukrainian people out of Kiev, but he still is armed and everything. And I talked to him. I said, can you send me pictures and stuff? He says he's having problems getting some pictures out. Hopefully he'll send me some tomorrow. I know that communication wise over there right now is bad, to what he said. So my other two buddies, they got split up. Tommy and one of my buddies ended up getting over there, but the other guy landed in Poland 2 days. He was supposed to be the next day after. He landed 2 days. We haven't heard from him yet, so we don't know what's going on. So, but it's the same with Wally. Like, the sniper out of Quebec. Well, the propaganda of Russia came out and said that he was killed within 20 minutes landing in Poland. Well, he's posted videos. He's alive and well, and they're trying to get him. Like,
right, because they've lost 7 generals already, and you wonder if he had, or anybody like him has done that. You know what I mean?
Well, in his interview, he said that he hasn't fired his sniper weapon yet, but,
One quick comment here, Kevin.
Yeah.
Epi Muse mentions that the javelin's about 170 gram, right? When I mentioned 60,000, there obviously the javelin unit comes with, I guess, that piece of hardware they look out through. That thing can be used multiple times, but the actual shell, they say that they can be like $60,000. So each time you have one of those, then you add in the cost of the other. Yeah, it's probably up there. But in any case, using one javelin to nail a tank is, in terms of cost effectiveness in the war, is wonderful, because you're talking something 20 times the cost. And then in terms of lives, I mean, again, this is morbid to even think, but if you're going to kill 3 or 4, that's advantageous, because you're not quote unquote wasting it. So it's been an effective weapon, and they've talked about this obviously ad infinitum, how this was, in essence, Kevin. I mean, you were in the Canadian military and you've been around the world. It looks like the Russians have always liked the tanks. The tanks. Just building thousands and thousands of tanks. But look what's happened. It's become almost ineffectual with the tanks. I mean, in 1 month, the tanks have done essentially nothing, because they've been just destroyed and destroyed and destroyed. And I think there was some number out of, for example, the first few days, there were 300 javelin shots and 280 hit. Some are going to miss. But it almost as if tank warfare has been completely ineffectual. It's almost as if they're using World War II tactics. And there
was something I had written down. I sent you, I think, on your Facebook the other day. I don't know where
I have your
put it.
messengers thing. Can you tell us what it related to, Kev?
It was with the anti-tanks. It was the MG, I think MG 48s. I think they were the ones that
I know they're using like the older T-72s and the T-80s.
Yeah, there was a few,
they do have
that,
more modern ones, but they haven't used many of those. Whether they can withstand the javelin, I don't know that, but you don't even have to take the whole tank out. You can take, I guess, the tread out too.
Well, I watched the video there. What was it? I think, was it on Monday or Tuesday, where they were showing a bridge going into, I think it was into Kiev, and it was showing a reporter that showed what an anti-tank missile does to a tank. Like, it was destroyed, totally destroyed. And if there was 3 guys in that tank, they were done.
Well, I saw one where literally you saw the guy's head blown off, and that's not cool. You know what I mean? Because that's a young kid who doesn't know any better, and they're obviously hitting right within the weakest point. And then they have those Stugna ones too. That they're I guess they're German or they're Swedish. I forget which ones, but whatever they are, they're extremely effective. The one thing they did say is that because the javelins are so effective, the Stugna ones, there's actually a video, but because the javelins, as soon as they're hit, you've got to run. You're not actually taking a video, so we don't have many videos, if any at all, maybe 1 or 2 of a javelin making a hit, because you've got to take off, and they're not literally taking videos of it. So although it may seem like it's not as effective, that's completely untrue. It's the point that it really can't take that video. It's just hit, run, go, and it's quite effective. Really effective.
Well, wasn't it? What was it? A few years back, they were saying that one of the passenger planes was shot down by a javelin, handheld javelin.
Yeah, if you're within 2 miles, you know, if you're a low-flying plane. So this is the interesting thing, Kevin, and everybody back home. It's kind of interesting the Russians made such a drastic mistake to, you know, I mean, maybe they thought they could just show all those tanks and say, okay, you know what, we give up. You know, it's like, you know, starting a hockey game and say, well, those guys look big, man. We might as well just forget it. You know, well, it doesn't work that way. You know, it doesn't work that way. And because not always does the big team win, especially if you can haul ass. But let's get back to the military. So, you know, they had this 40-mile convoy of tanks, and now we're a month in, and they're shooting cruise missiles from Russian territory because they can't do anything within Ukrainian territory. So the shame is you've been talking about to me privately, Kevin, and one of the reasons why you were going to go there. And by the way, frankly, I am happy that you were not accepted. Anybody who's 62, like myself, it's a considerable risk, and with your health, you know, it was a danger. But I mean, I applaud you for what you tried to do. But what they have done, as you've explained to me privately, you know, it's just awful. And you know, I think that's what triggered you to want to go there. And obviously your friends are there, so you see that they're just indiscriminately hitting anything, and then they're denying it, and they're saying, you know, on their own networks like Biavri Kanal, which is first channel 1 in Russia, they're just saying that we're doing strategic bombing and we're only taking out places where they're firing missiles from. And bullshit.
I mean, today I read an MSN. It was a story. I trust the person that had put that out, but he was saying there's been like 21,000 volunteers so far from all over the world that's tried to sign up. People are signing up. They've got signs in cities that are on windows that you can take your cell phone and click it and sign up and go.
Yeah. Well, I think they're being paid. So in a certain sense, there might be mercenaries. Some aren't. Some just want to go. And I get that.
I don't think they would really classify them as mercenaries. I think they're classify them as private contractors.
Private contractors, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you've probably heard this piece of shit, Lukashenko, this prostitute for Putin in Belarus. It looks like he's going to be forced to send some of his troops, but my inkling is that they'll suffer the same fate. What do you think if they start coming down from the north from Belarus? You think they'll probably get the same
Sure.
as
They're,
the Russians.
they're going to meet resistance. I'll tell you, because what affects just not me, going through this, but I've talked to a lot of people on private Facebook and stuff about the Ukraine problem. And a lot of my friends that I've talked to said if they were able to go, they would go. I mean, some of them are married, they got families. They figure
And let's just also state that Canada does have a very large Ukrainian population.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. And, I mean, like they just basically said, that as long as the Ukrainian people can get, I mean, I'm not saying the Ukrainian army is not structurally done well, but when you start adding the mix in private contractors that were special forces, snipers, engineers, stuff like that, and you mix that whole group together, this is what Putin didn't think in his head. He thought, I'm going to go into Ukraine, I'm going to take it over, and everybody's going to stay out of my way. Well, guess what? He found out the hard way.
Right.
Because now he's got the world on his ass and cutting him off from everybody.
Right.
Over what? Over what, though, Brian? Over what? What? Because Ukraine wanted to join NATO and he wanted all the Republic of the CCP back again? He knew that wasn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
When he threatened Finland and said, if you join NATO, we'll bring the wrath of God down on you. Finland is not even part of Russia.
Right. Although it's very similar in terms of the way it looks geographically at the border.
Yeah.
Right. Now and I think that's probably why Putin really, he could say, I mean, I think he obviously would accept Belarus's help, and he's obviously pressuring Lukashenko, but I don't think it's, as you said, they're going to meet the same fate as the Russians. But it seems like he really, really is hoping for the Chinese to help him out with the technology, because, Biden basically said today, we are with you now and we're going to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to me, that, if he really means that, and I assume that he does, that means that, we're not going to get involved in putting boots on the ground, but we're going to start upping the game in terms of technology. And already it's working. So now, who knows what other things they're going to get besides the switchblades? Maybe there is something. Maybe there's a death ray. I don't know what it is. But whatever it is, there is a technological advantage for the most part on our side. Yes, they have a hypersonic missile, but even then we might even have something, but I don't even know why you would be using it right now, because we're not going to be using it against Russia.
Like I watched, when I would try to get on last weekend, guys, sorry I had to work late, but when you had said, when I had watched the replay of it and you said they use a supersonic missile, and I was going, okay, well, to me, that's basically, you're breaking the Geneva Accord right there. Like, I mean, there is part of a Geneva Accord where, you're not supposed to be using certain weapons against.
They maybe say the phosphorus. Still. It looks like they probably use it. They're trying to find out now. They haven't proven it yet, but we'll see what happens. But I'm just trying to think now. Again, Biden seems to be saying that we're going to go all the way, which we could have a protracted war. And it looks like they'll lose that because, again, you're getting into a supply issue. I think we had maybe discussed this. I don't know, but the problem with Russia when they were losing wars, like in World War I, they couldn't resupply. They started off well against Turkey, and then basically the Germans wore them down. The Crimean War and the Black Sea, they fought against. They had a bigger army than the British and the French, but the British and the French could supply, and even to a certain extent, World War II, where my father fought in, they were still, through the Lend-Lease Act, getting a lot of equipment from the United States and Canada, food. Without that, you lose. And this is, in essence, why we won World War II, is that we could resupply, and Germany could not keep up with that. And if you're going to have that particular type of situation, a war of attrition, it looks like Russia loses unless they, again, decide let's carpet bomb the whole place, which they have been doing, at least in the East.
Yeah.
Now, whether they do that in the West, that's what I'm going to ask you. Because there was a bomb today in Lviv. What if, again, this is just speculating, but what if Putin decides, okay, we're going to bomb the shit out of the West, right up to the Polish border. What do we do? You know, I mean, they're essentially just carpet bombing the entire country.
It would only take one shell to actually land in Poland by mistake.
And then what do you do?
Once he drops a bomb on a NATO country, then he's done. Sorry. Then it comes to, you know what, Brian, I'm really surprised. You know, like, I mean, past history,
I don't think we would, Kevin. I mean, if it went into Poland, I don't think they would just automatically shoot a cruise missile into Russia. I think the cruise missile would shoot into Russian troops within Ukraine.
Yes. It would. Yeah.
Right.
It wouldn't likely land on the Kremlin.
They don't want to have the Russian people all upset. We keep it within that realm, unless, of course, they do something much more destructive and maybe do attack. Again, you and I discussed this. Is again a private conversation we had that it would probably be likely if they were ever to go to war with us, they'd probably come through Alaska first and try to run out through northern Canada. You know.
Well, because we're such a big landmass here. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they can put a lot of stuff here, but, you know, you got to get it here first, right?
Right. You got to get through here first.
Yeah.
You know? You
got to get through us first. I mean, with the Americans being our neighbors, and I don't think they'd even let that happen. And I know that Canada would allow the Americans to come right into Canada and go up to Alaska just to protect us here. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I mean, look, we do have a very stable military here. We may not have nuclear weapons.
And you were in the military, Kevin, so everybody understands.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't call us the Crazy Canucks for anything. Like, I mean, that was a nickname that's been going on in Canada for years and years and years, because we don't care whether you come into our country with big armament and we don't have that. We'll fight you in the streets with baseball bats and pitchforks if we have to. But we'll go down dying to protect our country. And that's what the Ukrainians are doing right now. They want freedoms. They want democracy. And they don't want to be part of Putin's little school he wants. Mm-hmm. You know? A buddy of mine asked me the other day, Brian, he said to me online, he said, have you ever seen a Wolverine backed into a corner? And I said, not really, but I've seen a lot of things backed into a corner. He goes, that may be the way Putin's going to feel soon. He's going to feel like a Wolverine backed into a corner. Then what does he do?
Right. And that's still the danger, I think, Kevin, that we're all worried about, because Russians don't like anything less than, you know, a victor. They don't like people who lose. They don't like you know, winning the silver medal. It's a loss.
Yeah.
So there's nothing worse than losing, and losing badly against a country with, say, the 9th or 10th strongest army, and they're beating you, and for no good reason. And I think that's the embarrassment, and that is probably a mortal threat to Putin, because again, we've already discussed that. You know, we saw what happened in 1905, and World War I, I guess, in 14 as it started. The revolution in 17. Things just go poorly in Russia when you start losing wars, and poorly for the leaders. And you know, it seems like the writing would be on the wall for Putin. But again, he is cloistered. He probably is in a bunker. He probably is like Trump, and he surrounds himself with yes people. But, you know, how much can you take if you're a loser? You know, you come back from the Olympics and you don't win a medal in hockey for Russia, they're pissed off, you know, because it's an embarrassment. And by the way, that happens.
Go back to the 72 series, Brian. Paul Henderson scoring the winning goal. Mm-hmm. They figured they were going to walk all over Canada. They thought they had the best team in the world. They were like top dog in Europe. Mm-hmm. You know, then they come against, you know, well, I could say it was basically, you know, Team Canada was an all-star team, but that's why they call it Team Canada. But I mean, when you look at Pat Stapleton, Pete Mahavlich, you know, who else played back in that day?
Bobby Clark,
Tony Esposito, those guys, Phil Esposito. Well, I remember Phil Esposito when he fell.
But it was a political event. It was an athletics event. It was still a political thing happening. It was the West versus the East, and it didn't look good for Canada for a while. But then things changed.
Yeah, well, it's like just go back to like.
And by the way, the Russians will still blame Bobby Clark for breaking Valery Kharilov's
Yeah.
ankles, which he did do, and which it wasn't nice. And
Yeah.
by the way, Kharlamov ended up dying sadly, in a terrible car accident. By the way, Kharlamov was actually of Spanish blood. They called him the Spaniard. I think his mother was Spanish or one or the other, but he had both citizenship. He could go back and forth. Very strange. But that became almost like a political thing because it was, the West against the East, as it always kind of was portrayed in Olympics, and of course Canada pulled that out. But Canada, as I've said, they've never been really close with Russia, and especially not now, because you're vice
when you
minister?
put 3 of our top parliament members on a hit list, we don't take kindly to that.
Chrystia, as I've said, Chrystia Freeland's
one,
considered an
Trudeau's
enemy
the
of the
other one,
state.
their defense minister's third. Yeah.
Right. So they've never been in the good graces with the Russians, your government. So that's interesting. It is interesting, but we're going to see where this thing.
You know what? But like I was saying about the speech that Biden gave, I mean, you could hear the cheers in the background. I guarantee you, likely most of those people were Polish. Some were Ukrainian.
Right.
Likely some Americans there, Canadians likely over in Poland too. But I mean, to me, it was sincere. He was very honest, Brian. I mean, he didn't pull any punches. I mean, basically when he called him a tyrant, and then he said he doesn't need, he needs to go. And to me, if I was Putin and I was called a tyrant and you need to go, that to me would be a personal threat, being a president of a country.
Mm-hmm.
So how he takes that, if he even seen the video, and chances are, don't worry, he likely has already seen it. And he's likely saying, oh, that old man, I'm laughing at him. Well, guess what? You're being laughed at now all over the world.
Right.
Right.
Now, I do want to mention, and I've said this before, I do keep in contact with 4 or 5 Russians, and I think I could say that 3 are very pro-West. And one told me last week, I was talking about, about perhaps the progressives in Russia could meet up with the younger people, and the oligarchs even, and perhaps start some type of coup or revolution. And she said, I'm going to ask you a question. In fact, I'm going to talk to her tomorrow. She said, what would you do, Brian, if you had an argument with what your government was doing, and if you went out to protest, you would be put in jail for 15 years. Would you be willing to do it? And she wanted me to answer her honestly. And I said, that's an extremely difficult question.
Yeah.
Because, 15
to
years,
give you an answer for.
Especially when you're 62, which is essentially for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I understood exactly what she was saying. And as Morgenstern, the Russian rapper who now is in Dubai, I believe, or the Emirates, he said about his friend who's from Ukraine, who's also a rapper, he said, you're lucky you grew up in a country where you didn't grow up being afraid. And I understand. This has been the history of Russia, is just oppressing the people and treating them like enemies should you, try to fight the system. And again, I know these people, they're good people, but they're afraid. On the other hand, there are others, a couple others that I know, and I just talk to them about literature and things like that. And I don't talk politics, but I do know their politics. Especially one, and she's around 71. Kevin, she goes hook, line, and sinker with the propaganda. Watch the TV. They will go to an end to say, Putin's right. In fact, I've seen various YouTube videos of interviews with Russians on the streets, and there are some, they're like the Trumpers. They believe that we're stupid, that we believe the propaganda of the West, even though we know what, that bombing of that theater killed 300 people. That was not bullshit. That was real.
Yeah.
But they think that's all propaganda, and they say that we're stupid. So how do you ever get beyond that? And I don't think you can.
Yeah. Okay, Brian, just give me 1 second. I just have to run to the bathroom. I'll be right back.
All right. Kevin's going to the bathroom. Anyway, folks, Good to see you. We'll put the music up a little bit and see how it goes. All right. That's my performance for the night. We only have about 10 minutes left, folks, and I will have to shut it down. I am going to be speaking with some Russians tomorrow, getting some more news. I cannot do any type of recording. They have specifically asked me not to do that, and I certainly wouldn't violate that because I don't want anybody to get in trouble. I have downloaded Telegram and WhatsApp, because it's probably the only somewhat secure network that I can use.
I'm very sorry about that, guys.
That's all right. I was just explaining to them, Kevin, that I do speak with Russians on the weekend, and I don't do any recording of my Russian friends because it could threaten their lives. I can only tell you that I do speak with them, and it is the truth. And I would never ever do anything to jeopardize that. Even the ones who are for Putin, it wouldn't be a good idea. But I can just assure you, that's what they've said, and I spoke with somebody today. I will be speaking with some people tomorrow. They're wonderful people, and I think some of them don't understand that Americans, and I'm sure Canadians, understand that there's a difference between the Russian government and the Russian people, and even the Russian people who don't really understand, what's going on. Those who believe the propaganda, it's a shame. It's a very sad story if you grew up in a country where you have to listen to, that one channel. And
I'd like to find just out of the top of my head, if it ever happened, if you got a poll of all the mothers out there with their sons that are fighting against Ukraine that really, really wanted them to go over.
I don't think they even knew
something
Kevin.
Stupid like this. Because to be honest with you, the Ukrainian war is a stupid war. It's a very stupid war. He's putting a lot of young kids' lives they've already lost their lives. There's a lot of Ukrainian soldiers who lost their lives. I wouldn't doubt it that there's been some foreigners that have went over there to sign up. They've lost their lives that we don't get to see on the news every day. Children that got killed, and just not in Ukraine itself, but I'm talking, we don't even know what goes on with the protests over there. We know that the Russian government doesn't like what they did when in the parade square. I watched that video the other day in the parade square where they were setting off, concussion bombs and firing at, basically Russian people.
Right. Yeah.
Are you stupid? That'd be like going down to City Hall in Kingston and start opening fire down there on Kingston people. And what's going to happen to you? You're going to get killed.
Yeah. There's a comment here, Kevin, and I want to address it because I've addressed this before with Evil. There is the Azov, and they are fascists. They're a very small group. I'm sure that the Ukrainians let them do what they do because they're still fighting the Russians, but they are fascists. But they don't hold any political power in Ukraine, and that's the good thing. Ever since Biden's come in, that the Ukrainian government, Zelensky, has tried to clean up the Ukraine. He has not let the Azov gain any type of political power. They understand about Nazis. They really do. Now, the fact that the Azov are fighting the Russians, they don't care about that. As long as you're fighting them, that's okay. But if the Azov think that they're going to go anywhere, they're not, because they haven't.
No.
They have not. They will not. And Zelensky and the Ukrainian government they've cleaned up the game a lot. And this is a good thing, because if Trump had still been in there, Trump already wanted them to have a dirty game, and then they wanted to have that Russian influence. And by the way, that may be a big reason why Putin decided this is time to do it, because Zelensky was going to clean it up. He's going to get a lot of those Russian oligarchs out of there. And, a lot of those corporate people you're talking about, well, that's kind of like the Russian corporate thing.
Sure it is.
You know what I mean? So it works kind of both ways. And, I'm convinced that's a big reason. He saw that Zelensky was going to clean the game up, and they were doing a great job. Then you had Klitschko, even though he's the mayor of Kiev, that's the gem of the country is Kiev, and he's the mayor. So essentially, he holds a lot of political power. not only because he's the mayor of the major city, but because he was a boxing champion. He's a national
Yep.
hero, and the people trust him. He's an honest guy. So,
And then,
yeah,
you know what? That's the funny part about Klitschko is that he represented Russia.
well, in terms of when they were the, I guess when he first won the gold medal,
Yeah.
you know, but Usyk, he's another one. I mean, Usyk, there's another guy too, Lomachenko. These are Ukrainian fighters, your champions, and they are giving it all up because there's some things more important than life itself, and that is your country and your compatriots. And Usyk, what he's doing is amazing too. He didn't have to go there, and he gave everything up, and we don't know whether he's going to survive. And that goes for Klitschko. I'm sure they want to get rid of those guys. So
yeah,
that's
because they have. It's not that they just got political power. They have likely,
in a sense, they're Hollywood stars there.
Millions of followers.
Right. They're known all over the world. They're true champions because it's more than just being what's his name, Tyson Fury, the funny guy. You know, Tyson Fury even said about Usyk and Klitschko. He said, you know, if I were in that same situation and England went to war, he said, even if the United States went to war, he said, me dad would be there and me buddies would be there, be the first ones there. I would hope that he really means that, and I'll take his word for it. But it just shows you that some things, as John Reed said, some things are more important than life itself. Because how do you live with yourself if you weren't there when they needed you? You know, you can't sleep at night. It's just not the way people operate. That's when, like during World War II, all of our baseball players, you know, Ted Williams and all the great baseball players
Joe DiMaggio.
left. You know, they went to war. Right. They went to war. All the hockey players went to war. It's just what you did because there was something more important than what you do, because you knew that mattered. And again, as I go back to with you, Kevin, and your friends, I assume that you saw what you saw and you said, that's it. I can't take this anymore.
No, it was.
And you're not Ukrainian, but you,
no.
You like a sense of fairness, and this is just.
My mom was Irish. She came here when she was 4 years old.
Mm-hmm. Now, you're also native Canadian, correct? Like
yes.
You said, mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ojibwe. Yeah, on my dad's side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we have ties to the indigenous people plus the Irish people. So I wonder, that's maybe the reason why my temper gets really bad sometimes. But my mom was such a quiet woman. She was so quiet. You knew my mom, Brian.
Yes,
you
I
met
did.
her. So
yes, I did. I knew your mother.
And your mom and dad got along great, as you knew back in the day when we played hockey together. My mom raised me and Barry, as a single mom, and me being the oldest boy, other than Doug and Joe, my two brothers that aren't with us anymore.
By the way, I agree with this, Kevin. I don't. Karen and Ken Goins, I believe from Canada. I'm not sure. If Trump was still president, then Ukraine would be doomed. I would agree with you. Because he would have just let them. He would have accused Zelensky, and the Republican Party probably would have we got to agree with Donald. We got to agree with him.
Yeah, they wouldn't have given them any help at all.
Nina, can you best communities? Yeah, and look, they. I think that's probably a good thing to have a president who's a comedian in the sense for Ukraine, because the comedian will step over that line. The comedian.
Yeah.
Will tell you the truth, and that's why you'll laugh because it's actually somewhat true. So
plus being a comedian as a president, you can come out with some lines that people wouldn't think about, and it may make you feel a little bit more at ease because you think it's funny, not so serious.
By the way, Veg says here,
but it's actually serious. You know what I mean? So
Veg is a fellow Ontarian, and he says you have to have a sense of humor to live in Canada.
Oh yeah, we do. We do. Well, ask Brian.
He would say that about Kingston.
Ask him back in the day when we were 15, 16 years old.
I think over half of our audience is Canadian here. So yeah, I did, and I know. I just I like the camaraderie. You don't know this, folks, but I played a lot of hockey when I was younger, and I wasn't real close with any of the teammates. I kind of switched a team, and I wasn't from the same area, and it was honestly very, very odd when you're closer with the guys on the other team. And then I mean that because I still hold bonds. I still know the names of people on his team. You know what I mean? And ask how they're doing.
Tacos,
You know,
Mike
what happened to
Graham.
them. Yeah, I remember them, and it's
Yeah.
just a strange thing that kind of happened. And never, it was like a home away from home type of situation, you know, with Canada. So when I have people like Veg and Nina Canadian, and I don't know, Karen and Ken, if you are or not, you'll have to tell me. It's always endearing having Canadian homes.
Well, I respect you. You know, I always respected your mom and dad because when we went there, you know, your dad took time out of his work schedule when we came down to play. And when I billeted with you, took me to the Philly Stadium, took me to the Spectrum, gave me a whole bunch of dental stuff that I brought back to Kingston when he was working for that. Doesn't help any because I don't have any teeth now, so I don't worry about it. Right. So I guess that didn't work.
Nina asked you to no, I never lived in Canada. I just went up there quite a bit on a lot of trips. And of course, I mean, I did go up to Quebec, and I've been to different places in Ontario, but I think because I had a very close relationship with the guy you see on the left here, Kingston was something I never forgot. I really didn't. I mean, I've been to, I've gambled in Windsor, Niagara Falls, the prettier side of the falls. I've been to quite a few. I've never been to Western Canada, which is gorgeous. My parents actually went, but only thing I can tell you is I always felt extremely comfortable. I never felt like when I crossed the border that the country was any different. I didn't. You know how when I was in Russia, I knew I was in a different country. The Soviet Union. You knew you were in a different country. You know, they're looking at you and they're looking at your face, and you're standing there for 8 minutes with a guard. You're in a different country. You know, but with Canada, and I'm not saying this because Kevin being a good friend of mine, I just never felt like anything changed when I went across the border. And Kevin will tell you, he made himself at home. And, you know, as soon as he got to Cherry Hill, it was like, my dad's laughing. He didn't feel like he had to be a different Kevin there. You could be yourself. And that's what I felt about Canada. I've always had an endearing opinion about Canada because I felt comfortable. And I knew that they were hardworking people. They were good people. They're really, really good people. And
that's why we would Brian, that's why we would never ever in our lifetime let anything happen to each other's country, because one of us would be back in each other's backs, no matter what.
Yeah. Well, that's just the relationship.
Like I said, you know, like getting back to this Ukraine stuff with Putin, I'm just gonna say what I really think in my heart about Putin. I can say Putin is a tyrant, which I believe he is. And if he wants to go back into history, if you remember with Hitler, that how many countries went against Hitler to take down his regime, and he should have known better going into Ukraine, especially not saying Ukraine was a NATO member, which they weren't, but near a NATO border, that people were going to get upset with him. I just think that Putin thought Ukraine was going to be a breeze. Posting pictures. He would have been better off staying off the freaking social media, posting, you know, oh, we've got 180,000 men on the border. Look at all these pictures of the tanks we've got. They're like 50
or
miles
even
away.
Bullshit about looking back to the past.
He should have been not stupid that there is satellites out, you know, above the earth that take pictures that go on every damn day. The governments of every world know what's going on and what's on the ground every damn day. Like,
well, I do also want to say, and I don't want to say that everything in Russia was like completely uncomfortable. I did like Moscow. It was not difficult for me. I had my mother, you know, my mother, she cried when she saw how people lived in Russia in the 1990s, early 90s, middle 90s maybe. She cried. She's, I can't believe some people live there. She saw a World War II vet. He was on a piece of wood. He no legs. He was just, his stump was like right on a piece of wood with four wheels on it, and he used to wheel himself around on his palms of his hands. And she just went right into the churches. And my mother, because she had a tough childhood, I think that she went home when she went to Russia, in the sense that, you know, she knew that feeling of things that were unfair, or, you know, bad things happening, and she didn't speak the language, but she felt it. You know, sometimes you go home without even having ever been there.
Yeah.
That was just her experience. So when she saw those things, it was very tough to take. So there are great things about Russia that I did like. The things that I don't like is this oppressive nature where a human being has to like say, oh, I can't say that, or I could go to prison, or I can get hit over the head. It's not something Kevin or I would have ever experienced. It just wouldn't happen. But we don't know that until you are in those shoes. And again, it gets back to what that woman said to me. She says, what would you do if you would get 15 years? And that is an indictment on ourselves, that we grew up in a world that is not the same over there. It's a different mentality. And I feel so bad for some really good people who never get the chance to do what Kevin and I think I do a good job just being with them on Skype, just to let them for 1 hour a week be able to open up with somebody they can trust, because that's it. They can't go anywhere and say anything.
No,
unless you want to pay the price.
That's a sad point, because to get back, like, you know, with you doing your phone calls, you know, for an hour a week. I remember the last phone call when your mom was really ill, and you got her on the phone when she was in.
That was the day before she died.
Yeah, in the rest home, and she says, "Where are you?" God, I cried for hours. After I got off the phone, I cried because I really wanted to be there, but we had COVID, you know, and it was a shame.
Yeah, it's.
I always loved your mom. I always respected your mom and your dad. So.
Well, it was. Yeah, it was something. Listen, Kev, I don't mean to break up the party here, but I do have to sign off. Okay, and I do appreciate. Now we will be on next week. I think. Let me just make sure.
I'll be back on Saturday if you want me on with you.
And I will. I'll send you a link. Hopefully, you'll keep in touch. See if you get any news from your buddies. They text you. Of course, we will never give out names. We keep very, very safe and all that. I want to thank everybody for joining Kevin and me, and of course David. David's with his granddaughter, and I understand that. So we will be back. We really.
Well, you know, you're gonna, next week with the three of us, he's gonna razz your ass again.
Dave's done that. Every minute I've known him, he's been like that. But David loves me. He's a good guy, and it's.
But hopefully within the next week, by the time we get to next Saturday, hopefully some things have changed in Ukraine. Maybe Putin will back down. Maybe he won't. But we'll see what's going to happen. But I think the world changed today after Biden's message.
Well, let's hope so, because he's got a lot of people trying to put a knife in his back in our country. And,
well, I don't think he's going to get a knife in his back from Canadians, because I'm not the only one that's seen it, and I'm not the only one I talked to at the Globally Plains where I work. A lot of people respected him after that.
Yeah, that's good. Listen, Sandy, you said Tamagami. I don't know. I did play hockey in a place called Tonawanda, New York. I don't know if that's close, but I played hockey up there. A small world, I guess, if you're familiar with Tonawanda. And one last few things, Veggie. I was not tired today. I don't know what happened. I stayed up. So, and of course, Sandy says good night. Thank you, everybody. And Kevin, I'm going to sign off here, so it will shut off. But I'll message you tomorrow after my Russian stuff, and we'll keep in touch. And then we'll see you next week sometime. All right?
Sure. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Kevin. Okay. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
You too, Brian. Take care, brother.